In this series. This video is all about understanding prompts, so helping your clients to get started and understanding the prompts that they're given in their classes and things like that. So this is just our example prompt again, and we'll come back to this later. So some important reminders before we get started. The biggest one being you're not expected to know everything. Your students may be learning about subjects or using texts that you've never encountered, and that's okay. You are welcome to look things up during your sessions. You can even look things up along with your clients. You may be able to do things that they can't in terms of research skills. Um, in conjunction with that, really your biggest role is to be somebody to bounce ideas off of, to offer writing tips, and to help with sort of the writing processes less than offering content to your students. So they should be creating that content. So with a college level prompt, they often have multiple sections or questions. Sometimes you need to answer all of those questions, or your clients will need to answer every single one of those questions. Sometimes they don't. But the biggest tip is to break it down. So those bite-sized chunks are usually a good first step to understanding the prompt with your client. One tip that I use often is to color code the sections of the prompt so that your client and yourself can visually really see each part. So going back to our example prompt, you can see that I've highlighted each of the colors correspond to one of the questions. And this will also later ensure that every part of this question is answered because you can go back and highlight in the corresponding color. So in purple, you could highlight where you answer how does the government in the Hunger Games compare to historical dictatorships? And that will really help your clients kind of visualize how much their space they're devoting to each of those questions and really making sure they hit each one of them. Some more resources to think about when trying to understand a prompt, especially if you yourself are having difficulty understanding it, is to ask the student if the professor has gone over the prompt in greater detail in class. Maybe refer back to their in class notes. They may not remember this happening, but they may have taken a note of it. Or sometimes you merely mentioning it will jog that memory. So you can say, oh, did your professor go over this in class? And they might remember it because you've asked. Also, looking at any online resources. So for us, that would be, Brightspace or something similar. And finally, if that's still not really getting you where you need to be, encouraging your client to reach out to the professor or TA. Sometimes students just need a little bit of prompting in order to make that next step, and maybe even writing the email with them will help them get through that. So, the next steps after you have understood the prompt really goes into depending on what kind of writing they're doing. So, they may need to reread sections of something they've already read, or they may need to find new sources. They may want to make a follow-up appointment and or multiple follow-up appointments, and sometimes making those appointments right with them at that time is the best way to do that because the student may forget or may decide later that they don't need those appointments on their own. So making the appointment with them, at least they have it. They can always go back and cancel if they decide they don't need it. And the biggest thing is you want to make sure they're walking away able to start writing or able to start sort of the next step of the writing process on their own. You don't want the student to be completely reliant on you to continue the writing process. You want them to be able to do some work on their own, and then if they still need help, to come back to you with something done. Going back to our example prompt, so next steps may include finding literary criticisms, using at URI, that would be using like our library database or using something like Google Scholar. And they also may need to reread parts of the Hunger Games in order to talk about them, in order to look for quotes. So that should be everything about understanding a prompt. And the biggest thing is making sure your students are able to walk away being able to do next steps on their own.